Over to the first question. Matthias, I'll start with you. How do you envisage the future of talent acquisition and its impact on talent teams?
The future, right? It's always
The
something that
future.
everybody is interested in. And sometimes people hold me accountable on podcasts, say like, hey, you predicted the future. Like, is it really happening? Right. So, yeah, I think what we will see in the future is I hope that we as a talent acquisition leaders and professionals will manage the transition in skill-based hiring. So many times you see that people are judged by resumes and LinkedIn profiles and so on, but actually really going into the skill-based approach and really removing all of those boundaries of where they are from and what they have been writing down in their resumes, because it's one of the most I think biased documents there. So moving into this direction and really helping organizations to understand what are skill gaps that you have, what are current skills, and what are future skills that you need to actually do that job. I think this is a big transition from a recruitment perspective. And this goes hand in hand with the way you assess skills, right? And so on. So many times it's also the balance in tech recruiting, for example, not just going 100% into technical assessment, but also balancing this out with social skills or communication skills, mindsets, people skills is also very important. We have seen that in leadership roles, people did not have the leadership skills, but they went into leadership because that's the only way they got promoted. So really avoiding this and having the right people with the right skills and the right roles is very, very important, I believe. Yeah. What else do we have? I think we have employer branding. Why would I say this? Because employer branding, honestly, I think needs to redesign a bit. In the last years, we had a very strong external focus on employer branding, like really a talent attraction, because we needed to close all of those roles. But we might not have created the right image, an authentic image of our organizations. And this is something we need to change. And the whole technology space, right, around AI, I think is also very important. How can we use this? How can we leverage this? Everybody should maybe now rethink a little bit, what kind of TA tech stack do I have? Yeah. And in some areas, you might not have the same, let's say, resources and capacity that you used to have. So you probably are forced into do more with less, and technology can actually be a solution to bridge that gap.
Yeah, no, really good point. I like the point on employer branding as well, because I think we've barely scratched the surface. It's one of these kind of, these frameworks that people have been speaking about for a couple of years. But I think the way that we can kind of integrate it with AI and gamification, make it really immersive, I think that's going to be like a really, really interesting point for us and direction for us to go in. Thanks, Matthias. Annie, over to you.
Yeah, I think definitely agree with everything Matthias just mentioned. I think following up on that, I think we are definitely seeing a bit of a shift. I think as TA teams are becoming leaner, TA partners are having to become a bit more generalist, I think, in their approach. I think what we saw in the last few years, much bigger TA teams with very specific recruiters per discipline, product recruiters, engineering specific recruiters, whereas now, because teams are a bit leaner, people are having to work across lots of different areas. So keeping their skills really broad, dipping into lots of different new areas of the business, I think, for sure. And then also, yeah, touching on AI, I think we're seeing how helpful that is in TA in particular, really freeing up recruiters to spend more time face-to-face with their stakeholders and their candidates as well, having a lot more kind of human interactions, I guess, rather than doing a lot more admin, which is always good. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a shift there for sure.
Nice. And I think, yeah, I mean, we all know that there's lots of restructuring going on around the startup and scale up scheme at the moment. And I think the first to go are usually talent teams. How are you as leaders kind of dealing with the emotional fallout and implications of that, Annie?
It's been really hard. I think it's particularly difficult for TA recruiters. We have to sit on LinkedIn all day, and the constant posts of people that are really struggling to find work, it's really quite upsetting. But I guess as TA partners, we can all gather around and help each other to help others find work elsewhere. So yeah, I think particularly in London, there's a lot of people out of work, but very keen to help those that are struggling.
Nice. And a Clio hiring?
You might be actually, yeah.
Nice.
We're thinking of opening a couple of roles. We've got a lot of hiring to do over the next few months ahead of our Series D fundraise in the next few years. So yeah, I think anyone that's looking for work could drop me a line.
Nice. And what about you, Matthias? How are you dealing with the emotional implications of it all?
Yeah, I mean, it's never nice if this topic comes up, right? I think it's then also an opportunity as a leader to step up and maybe explain the value of talent acquisition. I personally see that, in the business, and there's this generic view of, we're just putting bumps on the seat, and we're just, being very transactional, and that needs to shift and change. But yeah, the emotional roller coaster is being close at your team, to your team, be transparent, and also help them to navigate this. And also, first of all, try to avoid it. Yeah, have those conversations with the C-level, have those conversations with your leaders, because this is something where you can then make the difference. And how we've managed this is at Amplify, for example, we looked at the whole people team. We said we had some skill gaps there. There were some projects that we needed to still needs to be finished, and they were core critical. So we moved a couple of people outside of my team because we had less hiring to do. And then we just moved them. And at that time, they were pushed out of their comfort zone, but also had new stretch goals and learning opportunities. Because then, to Annie's point, it's like you have a more rounded, well-rounded profile, which actually help you also in your next job or when you go back into your recruiting job to understand it more holistically. So what we have not talked about, like onboarding, internal mobility, talent management, are topics, or even L&D, where talent acquisition can help out. And even if you look beyond people teams, you might even think about sales. Yeah, why not? I mean, there are so many things that in existing sales teams, they might also add value to actually drive revenue growth in order then to hire and get back to their normal job. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, no, good point. Very good point. Okay, let's move on to